Good morning, July 2nd, 2014. Thank you all for watching yesterday's video. And following from yesterday's video on responsible architecture, we go right into the idea of quality architecture, which is the topic for today. Quality is directly connected to two other values. We've been discussing values for a while. First of all, excellence. One has to strive for excellence, obviously, in whatever it is that one does. But in architecture, as I've mentioned before, every line matters, every expression matters. And the pursuit of excellence is what it's all about. Very different to perfection. Excellence is not directly connected to perfection. It's also not directly connected to the final product. The final product will always be brilliant if there's been a pursuit of excellence. And for that pursuit of excellence, one has to have integrity in thought, integrity in concept, and integrity is honesty. So if you have an honest piece of architecture that you have built and designed and thought about carefully, conscientiously, appropriately, with relevance of culture, of time, of where we sit, Neha, in terms of globalization, of how the digital world is impacting us. One has to be honest about exactly where we are. We can look at quality architecture through the ages. Umar, this is for you. Whether you look at Tarawando or you look at Sinan's Hagia Sophia and you look at all the other Istanbul architecture, you look at Alhambra, you look at the Mayan temples, you look at Taj Mahal, you look at the Pantheon or the other classical structures in Rome and Athens. Look at the Acropolis, for instance, look at the Kremlin, look at Japanese gardens, Shinto temples, look at all sorts of things from the very, very far east to the very, very furthest west. And you will find that the things we discuss in architectural history courses are to expose you to quality architecture. And it's not just modern architecture, it's not just Corbusier, not just Frank Lloyd Wright, not just Geoffrey Bawa that are masters. They've been masters through the centuries, and that is all about quality architecture that has maintained its integrity, its honesty to itself, to its thought, its people, its creator, its users, its climate, its culture, its tradition. And the most important thing for us today, I guess, in terms of quality architecture is to understand who we are. Identity has become a huge issue. And it's a brilliant issue for Pakistan, who's a very young country. Identifying who we are, where we've come from and where we're going is critical. As Neha rightfully said in her comment, that we are influenced by so many different factors, from TV, from film, from books, from literature, from the internet. It's this vast open library of information that is being bombarded at us. And how do we find our direction through it? Well, we go back to the basics, and no different than William Morris and John Ruskin did. Bilal, this is for you. In terms of reviving the arts and crafts movement, maybe this is a time in architectural history for all of us here in Pakistan that we should look at the rich tradition that makes us who we are, all the way from Mohenjo-daro to today, and even further back. Start from Gandhara, start from further back, and see all the bits, the breadcrumbs, the trail of cultural heritage that we have inherited, and start piecing it together, analyzing it, understanding it, see what it meant to the people when it was made, what it would mean to us today if we were to revive it. Not copy it, not recreate. I'm not thinking about an entire pure revival of what it has always been. Certainly that needs to happen. But in terms of how does one understand what those moves, those marks, those expressions were back in those days from the last 3,000 years till today, through the last 66 years that we've been defined as this political boundary called Pakistan. Where do we take it? And geographically, we sit in the most incredible spot in this region between Iran, Afghanistan, China, India, Russia at the very top, the Indian Ocean touching the edges of Africa and all the way down to Sri Lanka. It's the most fantastic spot, plot of land that we have. And we're influenced by all sorts of things. We're influenced by people who've come through from, we've been influenced by the British. You can see it in our architecture, in our systems, in our infrastructures. We've been influenced by the Mughals, the Ottomans, the Turks, all sorts of people that have come through, and people before them. not just the Greeks and Alexander, but others. So today, if we were to look at Marshall McLuhan and his notions of global village, and where do we sit in this global village today, and we study the arts and crafts movement and its relevance to the industrial age back in the time of John Ruskin and William Morris, and see, well, how do we apply those rules to ourselves? Who are we today, and how do we take Neha's question of applying all these influences to where we are? It's a huge topic. It's a huge topic, but all of it depends entirely on this notion of integrity. We have to be honest with ourselves about who we are, honest with where we've come from, honest about what parts of are getting influenced potentially negatively by the world around us. What does the outside world think of us? What do we think of ourselves? Who do we think we really are? Who do we want to be? And who are we naturally? Who are we genetically? All of these things will get reflected in our expressions in architecture, because the architecture will survive, it will stay, it is a reflection of society today, no different than any other art. It's a reflection of wealth. Kristen, this is for you. Of course it's a reflection of wealth. When you talk about power in architecture, you talk about wealth. They're both interconnected. And today's wealth may be different, today's colonization may be different. Maybe we're talking about a third world digital media imperialism. It's no longer about people pitching tents and saying, this is my property. Maybe it's about coming through media, through our minds, through our thoughts, and changing our perspectives on life ahead. So quality of architecture is dependent on all of these things. Whether we studied Tada Wando yesterday or Najib Umar today, all of these influences play a role, and we must be honest to ourselves about them. Quality of architecture will always depend on not only our identity, but then the materiality of the buildings, the sensuality of the buildings, the quality of the experience, the integrity of the spaces, the beauty of them. There's an aesthetic to the experience, an aesthetic to being integrous about the whole situation. It's not just about the form, not just about how it looks, not just about the functionality, but it's about the listening to the architecture, the music of it, the dance of it. Does it come alive when you live in it? Does it create a conversation with you? Can you talk to it? Does it talk back to you? Does it almost have an emotional reaction to your life within it? As the lights go on, as the breeze blows through, as you can feel your feet and the sound of your steps on its floors. Does it talk to you? Is there a poetry to it? Is there lyricism to it? These are all elements that go way beyond just defining architecture's form or function. It's a much bigger creature, it's a much bigger expression. It's more than modern dance, it's more than any orchestra, it's more than any opera. It's a built living being, and it stays around for many, many years. It lives through decades, it sees so much, it carries so much memory. So of course integrity is important and honesty is important. I mentioned this yesterday. Avoid copy paste, avoid plagiarism. Today's video is sort of encompassing all of these things, and the arts and crafts movement, Bilal, is a giant thing that we must study. I think this is the time for Pakistan and Pakistani designers and architects, in terms of trying to understand our identity and where we sit today, to look back at revivals in a contemporary idiom, like the arts and crafts movement did, to their traditions. We must do the same for ourselves, I believe, and try and define a language that is relevant to us, particular to us, and actually makes sense for who we are, where we want to be. Let's see where this conversation takes us into tomorrow. Thanks.